Well, turns out Super Wild Card Weekend wasn't so super after all. What's up, sports fans? Welcome back to Takes from the Couch. I'm your host, Josh Fry, and today we're going to be doing a little bit of a recap of the NFL Wild Card, the super Wild Card playoff weekend. Obviously, if you watched any of the games, or at least most of the games, you know that the games weren't so super. I think the only two that ended up being one possession games were the Niners, Cowboys, and then the Bengals and Raiders. Other than that, it was kind of just blowouts all across the board. Nothing super exciting happened, and hopefully we get some better games of the divisional round, because I don't want to see that for the next 3 weeks. But without further ado, let's get into these games. Figured, let's get the least interesting one out of the way first. I'm going to start off talking about the Steelers versus the Chiefs. Honestly, that game ended up going just about the way we expected it to. Steelers went into Arrowhead and got completely blown out of the water, completely outmatched by the Chiefs. Lost 42-21 at the end of the day. Patrick Mahomes threw 5 touchdown passes over the course of about 10 and a half minutes of game time. Just ridiculous how quickly that Chiefs offense can just pile up scores. By the time that run was over, this game was well out of reach. Then honestly, not too much interesting happened in this game. But hey, at least TJ Watt scored a touchdown. That's something that this Badger fan can take home with them and be happy about. So that was the Steelers versus the Chiefs. All right, next up, I'm gonna stay with the AFC trend here, and honestly stay with the trend of getting some of the more boring games out of the way. Next up is going to be what was the Saturday night game, what was supposed to be another ice bowl between the Patriots and the Bills. Honestly didn't look anything like the first ice bowl we saw in Green Bay. Bills kind of just ran away with this one too. I went into this expecting a super low scoring game. I picked the under for that game. I had the Patriots winning this game, but Josh Allen said to hell with all that. It's his world and we're just living in it. This was honestly a really, really impressive game by the Buffalo Bills. They scored touchdowns on all 7 of their drives. And it just goes to show that if this team didn't have a couple fluky losses in the regular season, there'd be no reason to think that this isn't the favorite to come out of the AFC right now. They've put together some crazy impressive wins, this just being the latest of them against a really good New England defense led by Bill Belichick. This great performance all around by Buffalo. Josh Allen, just incredible ability to throw the ball in that cold weather. Like, you got to think that ball just felt like a rock the entire night, and he was just rifling it wherever he wanted to whoever he wanted. But honestly, the Patriots in that first quarter, it seemed like they were going to try to make this a game. They were driving down the field in their first drive. Credit to Mac Jones, honestly, for being a rookie in that situation. He didn't really fold under the pressure that much. I mean, it's just when your defense isn't going to help you at all, there's not really much you can do as a rookie quarterback. But on that first drive, he was leading them down the field. He had them in the red zone, I believe. And then Micah Hyde just made an incredible play on an interception, and that's just where it seemed like the momentum turned. Bills started running up the score, and then the game ended 47-17, and Buffalo is moving on to the divisional. The final game of the AFC, this was the first game of the weekend, Saturday afternoon. Bengals versus the Raiders. Joe Burrow and Derek Carr both playing in their first playoff games. Pretty interesting matchup going into it. And honestly, this one is the one that kind of lived up to the hype. I kind of figured this would be a close game, and this definitely was the most interesting game of the weekend. It just kind of sucks that it had to happen first, and then we got blowouts pretty much the rest of the week. So, Joe Burrow, first playoff game. he went in calm, cool, and collected and had a really good game. Jamar Chase as well, for a rookie receiver in his first playoff game to go over 100 yards receiving with 9 catches. That's pretty ridiculous. And then you got Derek Carr on the other side. He didn't have a bad game himself. It's just that last drive, fourth quarter, driving down the field, 4th and goal, you throw an interception, and that's the end of the game. I mean, and then the Bengals end up winning 26-19. I mean, honestly, kudos to both teams. They both showed up. They played really good games. It's just Bengals ended up on top of this one. But yeah, Burrow, Chase, that tandem, for how good they were in the regular season, it's becoming scary now that they're in the playoffs. I mean, normally you see young teams like this, they'll be celebrating after that first big playoff win, but these two guys, no, this was head into the locker room, taking care of business, and they're moving on to the next week. I mean, it's kind of crazy how mature, how disciplined these two really young guys are. Goes to show why these two guys were touted going into the draft as high as they were, because I mean, they're taking every bit of that championship pedigree that they had at LSU and they're bringing it onto the Cincinnati Bengals roster, and I'm excited to see what they can do in the next week. But as for the Raiders, I mean, as good as Derek Carr was, his receivers weren't really doing him any favors. There was a lot of drops in this game, a lot of drops. And honestly, a lot of them came from Darren Waller. I mean, if he wasn't making a drop, he was running a bad route and it was just a miscommunication out the line of scrimmage. I mean, it wasn't a great day for him. I know the numbers aren't going to suggest that it was anything bad. I think he ended up with like 7 catches and 76 yards. But between the drops, the bad routes, the miscommunications, it's just, if you're Derek Carr, there's not much else you can do if your receivers aren't going to be able to do their job as well. So, I mean, the Bengals definitely deserved the win. They came out and they played better football. But yeah, kudos to Derek Carr. I think this Raiders team has something to look forward to into the future. Just wasn't their year. All right, moving into the NFC. I'm going to start with the game we just watched, or at least I just watched as I'm recording this video. Cardinals versus Rams. Rams win it 34-11. Just the latest blowout of the super wild card weekend that we had. Kyler Murray, it was that classic first playoff game for a young mobile QB for him. I mean, you go down the list of guys, this is pretty much how it goes for a lot of them. And on top of this being his first playoff game, I mean, to have to go up against the Los Angeles Rams defense, Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey, all those guys, it's a tall task to ask somebody to do that on the road in LA. And yeah, he just wasn't quite able to pull it off. It doesn't mean he's a bad quarterback. It doesn't mean he's any less of a quarterback than he was going into this game. This stuff happens, especially with young guys. And the Cardinals I felt it before the season started. It just felt like they were a year away from being a true contender in the NFC. Maybe another year of development. You have this loss. You have to feel this loss going into the offseason. It fuels you through the summer. And you just come back next year and get better. Maybe we'll see a different Arizona Cardinals team. But yeah, it just wasn't their year. But yeah, that Rams defense, it was suffocating as advertised. I mean, Aaron Donald's coming off the line of scrimmage. You got Von Miller there off the edge. Jalen Ramsey in the secondary. This team's just full of studs. And they shut down absolutely anything that Arizona was even trying to get going. I think Arizona, it felt like they abandoned the run way too early. I looked at the stats in the middle of the third quarter, and they had only 7 rushes for the entire game. That's just not how you're going to beat this Rams defense. You have to be able to put drives together. Going 0 for 8 on third down, it's just not a winning recipe. And honestly, that's how the Rams won the game. They won it with their defense, and then their offense made a few plays here and there to get them the win. But one more thing on this game, it's ridiculous that Cam Akers was able to come off an Achilles tear 6 months after the fact and put up the type of numbers that he had today. I mean, I'm gonna pull up this. usually pull up box scores for this, but I'm going to do it for this game. Let's see. Cam Akers, 17 rushes for 55 yards. Not crazy, but I mean, his rushes, he broke off a couple really good ones, and then he also caught a 40-yard catch from Odell Beckham, actually. So, I mean, just the fact that he was able to suit up for this game is impressive enough, and add on to that he put up almost 100 yards of production in a playoff game, that's... Kudos to that guy, man. Kudos to that guy. Kudos to the Rams doctors, that medical team over there. That's absolutely ridiculous that they were able to put this together. Then on the other side, you got J.J. Watt, who had his entire shoulder reconstructed just a couple months ago. I mean, this game was full of just crazy storylines like that you would never think that these guys would come back the same player, let alone come back the same player like 3-4 months. It's just ridiculous what some of these guys would have been able to do. But yeah, kudos to them. Kudos to Cam Akers for having the return of a lifetime. But yeah, I think I've talked enough about the Cardinals-Rams. Let's move on to a different game. All right, so the second game I'm going to talk about from the NFC was actually the first game that was played for the NFC. Eagles and Bucks. That one was played at noon on Sunday. Honestly, another one. I thought it might end up being a little bit closer than it did, but it's tough to keep a game close against Tom Brady, especially when it's, again, a quarterback playing his very first playoff game, and he's playing against Tom Brady, and he's playing for one of the two teams that Tom Brady has lost to in a Super Bowl. I mean, I probably gave the Eagles a little bit too much credit going into that game. It didn't take enough into account the fact that Tom Brady is just a serial killer when it comes to playing football and his competitiveness. And it showed. It showed on Sunday. Honestly, Tom Brady didn't do anything crazy special. He played like you expect Tom Brady to play, but at the end of the day, I think it's still that Tampa Bay Buccaneer defense that is going to be the hardest thing to stop throughout these playoffs. I've said it before, I'm going to say it again. When Devin White and Levante David are at that linebacker position for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they are almost impossible to beat. They're going to shut you down in the run. They're going to take away any sort of short to mid passing game that you've got. They're going to take away all the screens. They're going to take away all the slant routes, all those easy yards that you can normally pick up against a subpar defense. You're not going to be able to get that. And then you got the fact that Vita Vea is coming at you from the middle of that defensive line. And it's just a complete nightmare for anybody going up against that team. And then on the other side, again, Jalen Hurts, first playoff game. Can't overreact too much to something like that, but I'm still going to. I didn't like what I saw out of Jalen Hurts, at least throwing the football for most of this season. I think the only reason he's really been able to secure this starting position at the quarterback spot for the Eagles is because of that Saints game he played last year when they destroyed the Saints and he went off for a ton of yards, ton of touchdowns, and they won that game. Because honestly, I don't think he's a great passer. He's a terrific runner. He's an exciting runner. But when you force him to just sit in the pocket and throw the ball, he's as inaccurate as it gets. I said during the game that if Gardner Minshew is in that game, again, full disclosure, big Gardner Minshew fan over here. I'm never going to deny that. But I think there were 3 or 4 passes that Jalen Hurts completely missed that Minshew might have had touchdowns on. And that might have just changed the entire course of the game. I don't think there was any way the Eagles were going to win this game, whether Hurts or Minshew was in the field. But again, it brings back into question, is Jalen Hurts actually capable of leading this team at the quarterback position for the long term? And then finally, to close things out, we've got the game that didn't have the most exciting ending, but it definitely had the weirdest ending. We're talking 49ers, Cowboys, historic matchup, huge historic implications with these two teams whenever they meet up. Classic nostalgia for anybody that watched those 80s, 90s football games. But at the end of the day, the Niners, they controlled the line of scrimmage in this one. That's pretty much what it comes down to. Trent Williams at left tackle for the Niners completely shut down Micah Parsons and any of that pass rushing that the Cowboys have relied on for much of this year. Brandon Ayuk exposed Trayvon Diggs multiple times. I thought it was pretty funny, but that's neither here nor there. Deebo Samuel, he was able to get whatever he wanted. Ended the game with over 100 yards. I think it was 110 total yards and a rushing touchdown. And then on the other side, Ezekiel Elliott had a dud of a game while Dak Prescott was forced to do everything for this team. And that's the case, and you've got a team like the 49ers that's going to try to just run the snot out of the football, and they're just going to try to hold on to that ball as long as possible. You have to be able to match that running intensity, and you have to be able to match that energy on the line of scrimmage, and the Cowboys just weren't able to do that. At the end, it got a little interesting. I still don't know what the hell that last play was, that QB sneak by Dak Prescott at the end of the game. And then you're relying on the ref's 40-yard dash time to decide a playoff game. That entire situation was just messed up from the get-go. It was a terrible play call. I feel like the refs could have done a better job of handling that. I know technically they did the right decision, but it still feels like there should never be an instance where a playoff football game is decided by a ref's 40 time. It just doesn't seem like that's a way to play a football game, or for a football game to end. Dallas Cowboys brings up a whole lot of questions surrounding, again, the man himself, Mike McCarthy. Is he a good football coach? I don't think so. I thought it was a terrible hire when they brought him in, and that last possession, even though the Cowboys really shouldn't have had that last possession, the time management on that last possession just is case in point of why I don't want Mike McCarthy coaching my favorite football team. Anybody that's looking to hire Kellen Moore is probably making some second guesses right now, even though they probably shouldn't be based off of just one game. But either way, it's probably happening. But yeah, as per usual, there's a mess in Dallas. 49ers move on to the divisional round. They head to Green Bay to take on the Packers. Rematch of the 2019 NFC Championship game. Should be a great one. Hopefully, this divisional round, we get some actual good football. That's the only thing I'm looking forward to. I'm going to have my picks out for those games later on in the week, so look forward to that. But that's the end of my video for tonight. For I guess this morning, as this is getting posted. But yeah, thanks so much for tuning in. Leave a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Check out my written stuff at VikingsTerritory.com, PurplePTSD.com, covering all things Vikings, NFL draft, general NFL news. It's all going to be there, doing it every single day, sometimes twice a day. So yeah, look for that. Stay tuned for my divisional round picks later in the week. But yeah, until then, see y'all later.